So picture this, it's 2021. That's the moment when I personally went into the hi-fi game. And as a new person who went into the hi-fi game, you definitely have seen the uprising of chi-fi. And back then, there was a lot of different things coming out, but the most prevalent one was from one specific brand that tries, I don't think they even try, to be honest. At this point, it seems like it's just second nature for them to take every single category possible. That is Moondrop. Personally, I feel like Moondrop is like, one of the strongest contenders back in 2021. And that's when they released one of the most, I would say, so-called revolutionary and most hyped up IEM that everybody knows of, the Moondrop Aria. What was said about the IEM basically is that it has the sound of at least a $300 IEM, but only for the price of under $80. Think about that. Isn't that amazing? Well, it's 2023 now, and we have something that, as it is, sounds like an aria. So if I translate that, that means that this thing indirectly still sounds like a $300 USD tuning, but for the price of under $20. This is the KZ ZVX. Let's talk about it. By the way, as I'm filming this, it's 2 a.m. so I'm trying my best to, make good do with the lighting. Hopefully it's okay. Okay, whatever. This will be it. So the KZ ZVX, it is under $20. If I convert it directly, it is only around $15. This thing right here, the first time when I listened to it, my initial impression is literally telling myself, why does this sound like an aria? Why does the tuning sound so familiar? And it hit me. It really sounds like an aria. It's only a single dynamic driver, but overall, the prowess for the price point is amazing. No unboxings today, I'm very sorry, because I only have the head pieces right now, but we can talk about the build. It is made of fully metal. It is around 12 grams if I'm not mistaken. You'll have to check the B-roll because I weighed it before, like probably a month ago. And yeah, this whole thing's basically made of metal, very solid. The faceplate definitely looks nice. It has an accented grille, which I don't really know if it's technically open back or not. Accent with two terms, KZ Acoustics and Dynamic Tech, which is one of the techs that they are using supposedly. And definitely the iconic hole. Why did they decide to copy the CCA? My only speculation, which I cannot confirm, which is they might probably also be using the same legendary driver as the CCA. But other than that, y'all know my shtick. I don't really like to, how would I say, do that much research because I'm scared that I personally might say something a little bit biased about it. But yeah, again, regarding the build, overall quite good, quite solid, except since I've been using this for on and off for about a month, one problem I personally noticed is that, the texture is a little bit concerning in regards to the head shells, because it feels like the type of texture where you are going to experience paint chippings. People who own an Aria probably know what I'm saying right now. It technically feels a little bit identical, which I'm a little bit concerned, but it is what it is if it happens. Because you know why? I'm an idiot. This is not mine. This is sponsored by Not Brand. Again, thank you to my friend who graciously allowed me to be sponsored to do this review. Not Brand, again, is just a very enthusiastic brand between me and my friend making IEM cables. IEM is definitely the end goal, but it's still in the very early stages of R&D, so don't really expect much of that. But if you want good cables, just find us, link in the description. Malaysia and Singapore were always available. Internationally, we are still trying to figure things out because certain people, they only use credit cards. So yeah, we will update in regards to that, to any good news if anything good comes up. So yeah, back to the video. After we've talked about the build, how is the fit? Now, in regards to the fit, one interesting thing that I can talk about is that they've provided foam tips, which sadly I do not like it that much. It doesn't really have that much of an ideal seal for me. And other than that, y'all know that if you wear foam tips, it's a little bit disgusting, I guess. I don't really like the texture inside my ear canal, so I opted for third-party tips, which is basically the default Sony ear tips that I feel like is the best for me. And even if you don't have this, even if I was using the foam tips back then, one of the most obvious thing is that this thing, the shape of the ZVX is very ergonomic. It's just like a very generic thing saying that, hey, this thing, you can technically just shove it in your ear and call it a day. But this thing right here, if you fit it in your ear with good tips, it really goes in. It really conforms to, you know, the outer holes of your ear. It really conforms to all the canals outside of your ear. So despite it being quite heavy, despite it being almost as heavy as a Z1R, the thing is that due to the fact that this thing fits so well, I've personally, the longest time that I've wear it is around 2 hours. There's no fatigue. Everything is fine. So fit on this hand is a thumbs up. The moment you all have been waiting for, the sound part of this whole review, the most important part of why an IEM is being reviewed. And me in particular, other than saying that it sounds like an Aria, that's probably the main point. The nuances, we'll get into it right now. But before that, people are definitely gonna be like, are you sure it sounds like an Aria? Well, I literally did not see the graph at all until now. So please, this is the graph. Tell me that it's not at least 70-80% the same. I think the graph just speaks for itself. In general, the KZ ZVX is a V-shaped IEM, no coloring. It is quite, I would say, neutral in terms of its color, with very slight sub-bass boosted properties on the graph, as well as not really that harsh of treble compared to the Arias. Now overall, when I talk about this IEM, in most cases, the overall tuning is definitely significantly synonymous to the Aria. But one thing is for sure is that what you are paying for the price is only for the tuning, the type of style. In terms of what is lacking compared to the Aria, I would say right here, right now, is in the technicalities part. But other than that, tuning is more or less the same. Bass, everything sounds good. Tone definition, based on the price, definitely you are not getting that much, but for the price, it's very good. For the price, I won't really complain that much. Maybe in very busy tracks, things might get a little bit muddy. That's probably about it. The bass, the mid bass, the lower bass are actually quite body. There's no bloatiness to it. Regarding the sub bass, there is rumble, but I don't feel like there's much of any dynamics to it. It maybe is a little bit of a one-dimensional sounding type of sub bass, if you would say that. But overall, still quite good, because the most important thing is that for some reason, there's no bass bleed. So that's good. Mids, on the other hand, male vocals is actually quite good. It is rough in texture. It sounds quite bodied. Everything is good. Female vocals, definitely a little bit on the lighter side. And y'all know I like to test it on J-pop. It does not pass the J-pop test, I'll tell you that. Sibilance is definitely prevalent on the female vocal part. And in terms of male vocal part, I personally only tested certain sharpness, not to the point where I would consider it sibilance. So going on to the mids, for the price, again, for the price, it is definitely okay. The synths, personally, I feel like might be lacking a little bit of body. It sounds a little bit on the light-ish side, but overall, it's been compensated by, you know, the very decent detail retrieval, the very decent technicalities that follow suit with it. Pianos, personally, I feel like are the strong suit of the ZVX. I've listened to a lot of tracks on and off, and all the things that I can listen to, the most striking part will probably be JKV's Golden Hour and the chorus to Slow Dancing in the Dark. Those types of pianos are very, very elegant, very strong, very bodied in the ZVX. That's what I can listen to. That's what I hear. Treble, on the other hand, upper mids and treble, on the other hand, this is a little bit of a weird thing that I would want to say. Everything is done quite right. It definitely still has a little bit of sibilance and heat. I wouldn't say heat, but it has a little bit of a peakiness for stuff like the hi-hats, the rides, the crashes, but not as aggressive as the Aria, which I personally really commend this pair to do so. But the treble extension, for some reason, is a little bit weird, as in it's a little bit light. Like if you hear a ride crash, usually you'll hear the decay. This thing, once you hear the crash, it sounds more like an echoey, reverby type of thing. But other than that, I think overall it's still very well executed, because again, the tuning, I keep mentioning that it's an Aria. You will probably know what I'm referring to for people who have an Aria. And The main selling point, I would say probably in the same sense that this is a budget IEM, is that in 2023, Technicalities can technically be very good for something under $100. Prior to filming this, a few days ago, I've asked my friend to come over. I let him test multiple IEMs in the budget range. He personally ranked this one very high in terms of its price. This thing at the moment costs around 66 ringgit, and he says it's around 200 ringgit. So, you know, it's technically quite good for the price. Dynamics on this pair, personally, I feel like dynamic on this pair is very on par. You would not believe the amount of IEMs that don't really do well in dynamics. But regards to that, yeah, dynamics is very good. Detail retrieval on this, I would say comparing it with the Arias again. Now the thing with this in regards to Aria is that the Arias shine a lot whenever you talk about the upper mids, whenever you talk about the treble. This thing sounds like an Aria, but the detail retrieval doesn't do that much justice on the treble. I think at most, it just does the most from the mids to the upper mids. That is about it. But regards to that, I would say it's because of these types of technicalities, these types of prowess in IEM that makes what that IEM is. And this right here, you can definitely hear the vibrato of the synths. You can definitely hear something like the nuance of guitar picks. It is very good. Other than that, soundstage. Personally, I feel like it's a little bit average at this point. Maybe in 2021, back then, it was very amazing for this price. Now, I think a lot of IEMs are already, you know, starting to improve over years. And this thing right here, I think I'm very surprised to say that it's very decent, but it's just average. It's not really that overwhelming. And it probably is wide enough, but the problem is that it's not, you know, far enough in terms of its depth. So whenever you're hearing something that's a little bit busy, it definitely feels like, you know, things are stacking on top of each other. But despite that, imaging is still quite good. You can still discern the different types of elements throughout the song. So yeah, so with all that being said, it's almost 3 a.m. right now. What are my conclusions on the ZVX? It is a very cheap IEM. It is surprisingly cheap. It is almost as similar as a CCA CRA, which by right I should have just said that. But it's 3 a.m. I'm not going to refilm it. But my main point is that since I remembered it now, let's talk about the CCA CRA. If you watched till this point, I guess this is one of the benefits of it, I guess. The CCA CRA is also one of the things that my friend personally tested. He mentions that this thing costs around 200 ringgit. He mentions the CRA cost around 125. He said 100 to 150, so I'll say 125. The CCA CRA, like we all know, is technically still the king of V-shapes for the budget round. Everything sounds straight to the point. You get what you paid for. It's very simple. Okay, it's very simple. But what it lacks in is the dynamicness of everything, and as well as the detail retrieval. Detail retrieval on that pair is definitely lacking, and overall it sounds a little bit less natural in terms of its tonality. The CCA CRA in some sense probably sounds a little bit, I would say, not really that mature. This thing, it has a better clarity and resolution, and I think it's quite obvious just based on the pricing. This thing is, back then, if people were to ask me what should I recommend to people, I would probably say the CCA CRA if you want a no-brainer. But after listening to this, after knowing that this exists, my conscience is probably very clear. I will probably recommend this to anyone that probably is on a budget and wants to have a good pair of IEMs. This thing is quite good. And with all that being said, I probably can't say anything anymore. I'm honestly quite tired, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.